My name's Byron Adams, and I'm the Vice President of Tripod. I'm joined today by the CEO of Educators Thriving, Tyler Hester, and welcome, Tyler.
Thanks so much.
And as part of our series, we're just having a conversation about people who are doing interesting things in education, and obviously Educators Thriving is doing great work in schools. And if you could just tell us a little bit about the story behind Educators Thriving and how you founded the company.
Yeah. Well, Byron, you and I did our teacher training together back in 2008, not to date both of us.
That's right.
But it was October of 2008 when I was in my first year of teaching. I'll never forget, my mom was visiting from out of town, and I was just not doing a good job, really struggling in the classroom. And she was like, well, can we hang out? And I was like, no, I'm too busy. I don't have time. She's like, well, can we at least get breakfast together? And I remember we went to IHOP before school one day, and the pancakes had just arrived at the table. And my mom asked me a simple question. She's like, Tyler, how's it going? And I remember my eyes welled up with tears, and a teardrop literally dripped into the pancake in front of me. And I was like, Mom, it's so hard. So I was crying into my pancakes in October of my first year as a teacher. And that was, I think, the first kind of moment when I saw that tear hit that pancake. I knew I wouldn't forget that moment. And I spent 4 years as a teacher. I spent 5 years leading a teacher training program after that. And I saw the fact that educators face a really predictable set of personal challenges, that oftentimes they feel overwhelmed and they neglect some of their personal needs. They're kind of taken off balance at times by the amount of adult conflict that they encounter in the work. It can be isolating. So there's this predictable set of personal challenges that people face, and yet we systemically don't do all that much to help people overcome these predictable personal challenges. And that just felt silly. So when I went to the Doctor of Education Leadership program at Harvard, and I was in that program, and we take a class in the first year, and it's called sector change. You have to think of an idea that you think has the potential to change the sector. And I started thinking about what could we do to help educators overcome these predictable personal challenges. And I had the idea to write a book. And at the end of the class, everyone was kind of like, a book? Do something, don't just write a book. And so I reached out to the Boston Teachers Union, and I connected with the head of professional development for the Boston Teachers Union. And I said, hey, I think I want to lead a program to help your educators learn about and practice with and apply strategies that are empirically proven to increase well-being. And the guy was quite skeptical, but eventually he said, yes, I'll give it a go. He thought maybe 10 people would sign up. He booked a room that could fit 15 people. And then we sent out an email advertising the opportunity for people to take part in the program, and 75 people signed up. And I think that was his first sign, my first sign, that there's a hunger for people who know they want to stay in this work, who know they want to sustain themselves in this work, to be able to sustain themselves in the work. And the program, long story short, went really well that year. I did it the next year as part of my doctoral capstone and studied the impact of it. And over the course of the years since, we're now working with about 30 schools, districts, county offices, and teachers unions across the country to help schools and school systems supplement their professional development with personal development, and specifically personal development that is rooted in empirical evidence about the strategies that we know reliably lead to improvements in well-being.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And one of the reasons why I love the work that you all are doing at Educators Thriving is the focus on well-being, but also tied to the research that underlies like the sort of outcomes that schools can anticipate as a result of working with you and your team. And I think it's something we have in common at Tripod too, is this focus on research and validation of some of the things that we're actually implementing. And we have a similar focus on outcomes as Educators Thriving. So I'm curious if you can speak to a bit of some of the main objectives of the program that you all facilitate in schools, and how does that tie into some of the challenges that you all know educators are facing, that you personally also faced as a teacher?
Yeah. Well, I should say what we do now, we do two things. The first is we help schools and systems supplement their professional development with personal development. And we're working with school and system leaders to measure the well-being of their workforce and analyze the results and take action on the basis of what they find. But to think about this first component of what we do, the personal development work, when I first heard the term, a lot of your audience is going to know the term positive psychology. When I first heard the term positive psychology, I thought it just meant fluffy psychology. But actually, as again, many of your folks in your audience will know, it's a discipline within the field of psychology. Marty Seligman coined the term in 1999 when he was president of the American Psychological Association. And the idea was that we had studied historically how to take people from -10 to 0, from clinically significant issues to being okay. And what we hadn't yet done is apply that same level of empirical rigor to understanding how do we take people from 0 to 10? How do we facilitate human flourishing? And how can we apply the same, again, level of empirical rigor to understanding that stuff as we had traditionally applied to the -10 to 0 stuff? And we've learned a lot since 1999 about what leads to human flourishing. And so what we do is we essentially say, okay, what are the common predictable challenges that we know educators face? And then what of these strategies that we've learned from research would be germane to helping people overcome these challenges? So right now we've got about 14 different sessions, whether it's core values or strengths or prioritizing or having difficult conversations or the science of habit formation or time management, where when we work with a new partner, we essentially say, what do you want to work on with your folks? And then we work to craft a program that gives people access to the learning experiences that they believe their people would need and benefit from.
Yeah, that's one of the things that always impacts me about programs that schools opt into is this work is voluntary, right? Like there's no prescribed curriculum for it, and so you all are designing it. Have a similar design focus at Tripod, where we're working on how to help schools measure effective teaching and what that looks like in classrooms, and then how students can give their own perspective in a way that teachers can add to a larger picture of classroom outcomes. And one of the things that we run into quite a bit and that we love working with schools on, and want to hear how Educator Thriving approaches this, is how we work with districts to institutionalize some of the focus on the subjects that we have measured and we know matter, right? So for you all, it's teacher well-being, and we totally agree with that too as an organization. So how do you all work with districts to institutionalize that focus across their practices throughout an entire school or district? And then one of the other things is, what kind of benefits do they expect to incur as a result of working with Educators Thriving?
Yeah, I'll start with the benefits. So I did my doctoral work in Stockton. We saw that there were about 120 people who were in the program, and we did 12 sessions over the course of the year. And then we had a comparison group of 450 people matched by school site and their tenure in the district and stuff like that. And we saw statistically significant improvements in depression, anxiety, and resilience. And then we went back a year later and we saw that of the people who were in the program, 97% of them came back the next year, and that of the people not in the program, 90% of them came back. So we saw a pretty meaningful improvement in the degree to which people were coming back to the district. And so I think for districts in this moment where attrition is ravaging the educator workforce, I think people, yes, want educators themselves to be well, and they want them to stay in the work. And there's this segment of our teacher workforce who wants to stay in the work, but who may not have necessarily the types of supports that really enable them to do that. And so hopefully we can be part of providing that. In terms of institutionalizing the work, lots of our partners, well, I'll say it this way. 20 years ago, almost no one was doing SEL for students. And now you're negligent if you're not doing social emotional learning with students. And yet today, not that many people are doing SEL with adults. But I think 20 years from now, you're going to be negligent if you're not doing this work to support the holistic well-being of your educator workforce. And so we're still in these early days of trying to figure out how we do this, how we fit this sometimes a square peg into the round hole of school systems, to institutionalize, to your great question, how we can fit this in. So different people do it in different ways. We're going into our 6th year working with the Boston Teachers Union, and with them, it's just a program that they offer to their members every year. In Duval County, Florida, and in other districts around the country, it's part of their induction program. So people can opt into a pathway within their induction program, whereby if you complete the Educator's Thriving program, you tick the box for that part of your induction program. Ventura County Office of Education is operating in a really similar way. In other districts in Henry County, Georgia, there are 5 PD days over the course of the year, and this is a pathway that people can opt into that. So what we find is, anytime we meet with a new partner, a big part of the conversation is, how do you weave it into the fabric of your particular system? In Brevard County, Florida, they do it at a set of schools throughout the district, and it's just part of the professional development day that teachers are already at. And so there are lots of different ways to institutionalize it. And one of the last things I'll say on this point is, you mentioned earlier the opt-in piece. We find that it's really important. So often this well-being work is like, people will send a PDF with like, hey, here are strategies you can do to take care of yourself. Or it'll be a volunteer thing at 4:30 p.m. after you're exhausted at the end of a day. And so one of the other things we do to work with every one of our partners is, how do you salt the oats? How do you institutionalize reinforcement and incentive for people to take part? So in some instances, they give people a stipend. We're working with New Haven right now to design a program where people are going to get a stipend if they take part and complete the program. In other instances, they get units that can move them up the salary schedule. So institutionalizing it is about, yes, like calendaring, when do you fit it in, but also how do you reinforce participation so it's not just something people have to do on their spare time.
That's great, Tyler. And I think so much of that resonates with, kind of the work we're doing too, and how we're approaching a lot of the issues that we're trying to solve in education. So grateful for your time today, and hope to continue the conversation in future meetings. So thanks so much, Tyler.
Thanks so much.